Sportsnet's Arash Madani joining us on video chat. I think it's been since the NBA Finals that we had my man Arash on. Good morning, sir. Where do we find you today?
I am just laying low today, Rod. I was on the LA-Seattle road trip with the Blue Jays, and I got a couple of days off. So just hanging out to talk to you.
Well, I appreciate it, and we're going to delve into the Jays. You see my bunny hug here. Yeah, we'll get on to that. But first, unfortunate situation with Andrew Harris and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. What's your take? You've always got great takes when this type of thing comes up.
Honestly, Rod, I'm a little confused because Harris says it was an all-natural product that he was taking, and yet it's Dianabol that he tested positive for. Dianabol is a steroid. You mentioned Ben Johnson just a few minutes ago. That was one of the steroids that Ben Johnson, his late coach Charlie Francis, said he was using. That and stanozolol or whatever it is. So I guess I'm confused how an all-natural substance could have a steroid in it. Now, I'm not calling Andrew Harris a liar. I'm just wondering, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's not that all-natural substance or not. But what's happened now in pro sports is anytime someone gets busted, anytime someone gets pinched for a positive drug test, they say, well, I not knowingly ingested this and I wasn't trying to cheat. And it just seems like it's the same old song and dance each and every time. But as Wes and as CMAC were saying, you are responsible for what is in your body and what you put in your body. And while it is unfortunate for Andrew Harris, when you have drug testing in sport, that's the bottom line. You have to be responsible for what goes in there.
And hence a 2-game suspension. Now, I'm going to go in a total other direction that you will love. I was just in Moncton for Touchdown Atlantic. Wonderful people out there in your home part of the world, Arash, but there is no CFL imprint in the land. You know that. You're from there. Your take on where things stand with the Atlantic Schooners as we sit here today, August of 2019.
Well, I mean, Rod, a few things. One, I found it comical that they announced a sellout because when you're watching replays, there are chunks of sections that are empty. Two, they overpriced that thing from the jump, and then they had to scramble to try and reduce the prices. That turned into a schmoz. Three, I spent some time in Halifax where they want to have that franchise be there, and there seems to be very little appetite for public money to go towards the construction of a stadium. And as each day goes by, the cost of a stadium is going to be more and more. They have a location in Shannon Park that they want to build it. They have interested owners, but ultimately it comes down to who's going to write the check. And the taxpayers in the city of Halifax and the province of Nova Scotia seem to have very little interest in being on the hook for writing that $300, $400 million check. Rod, I know there was some interest when you were there in Moncton, and there were a faction of people that were excited about the CFL being there. If you had asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I would have thought the appetite would be more than it is today. And I don't know what's changed. Maybe it's just the understanding that taxpayers shouldn't be on the hook to pay for multimillionaire and billionaires' pet projects. But I don't see this. I don't see the Atlantic Schooners. I don't see football in the Maritimes being any closer to a reality now than it was a few years ago.
I couldn't agree more. And I came home actually disheartened because the vibe I kept hearing was that they're rabid for CFL football out there. I came home, Arash, they're very lukewarm to CFL football. They like football, but not necessarily CFL football.
Well, I mean, think about it. It's never been there, and it's very much a university football market, a university football region. Halifax, which is the biggest market in Atlantic Canada, is an event town. You want to bring the Brier, you want to bring the Scotties, you want to bring the World Figure Skating Championships, you want to bring the Memorial Cup, you want to bring the National Basketball Championships. It's going to work. But as a franchise, I mean, the Halifax Mooseheads work as a major junior hockey team, but the CFL's totally different. You're not paying those kids to play hockey. I mean, you got 2 pro guys sitting beside you right now. I mean, the expenditures for a franchise just on player salary and staff salary and injured reserve and practice roster, shoot, you're talking about, in the vicinity of $8 or $9 million a year. I'm not sure whether or not that's going to be economically viable in Atlantic Canada. It's not economically viable in Toronto. It's not economically viable in Montreal. It's not economically viable in Vancouver. Why do we feel that in Halifax it's going to be?
For sure. And hey, lastly, you mentioned that Jay's West Coast road trip didn't go well at all. But they're home tonight. Josh Donaldson's there. Again, you see the hoodie. What's his legacy, my friend? Franchise great or the GOAT for the way it ended?
Oh, franchise great. There's no question. I mean, you're wearing that hoodie because of what happened in 2015 and a little bit in 2016. Josh Donaldson was the most valuable player in the American League. They're going to have a video tribute for him tonight. Josh Donaldson was part of the group that revived baseball in Canada, that put the Blue Jays back on the map. He was as dynamic a player that Toronto has had. I mean, you put him and Kawhi, and it's hard to think of another one in the last 20, 25 years. Maybe since Robbie Alomar. You know, when you talk about, yeah, Vince was close, but Vince didn't have playoff success. And as the guys beside you will say, it's one thing to do something in the regular season. It's another thing in the postseason. And Josh Donaldson was an MVP. He carried the franchise to back-to-back American League Championship Series. Roddy, when he was raking, and he's raking now with Atlanta, he was outstanding.
32 home runs with the Braves coming in there tonight. Listen, lastly, because I don't know when we'll see you again, Labor Day weekend in the CFL.
Mm-hmm.
Your memories of Regina Labor Day Classics.
Well, I think I've shared this with you in your previous show, and if Clark can put the camera on Wes and C-Mac for a minute, because I got to tell you this story, fellas.
Okay.
It's my all-time favorite CFL story. So in 2008, I'm the PR guy for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Sorry, Wes. And our GM at the time, Brendan Tammond, brings me into the office a couple weeks before, and he says, listen, I know you're from the East Coast. You've got to experience Labor Day in Regina. The team's going to stay in Moose Jaw, but why don't you stay in Regina and just get a taste of it? I said, all right, whatever. That sounds great. So I'm checking out of the hotel on Sunday morning, and the elevator doors open, and I hear this voice. What are you doing here? And I look over, and it's Charles Roberts, your boy, Wes.
Yeah.
The tailback of the Bombers, the Hall of Fame tailback who had opted not to go to Moose Jaw, and no one on the team knew. There were a few guests that had accompanied Charlie, and Charles is like, well, do you want to ride to the stadium? So I jump in the car with him. We get into the car. He lights a cigarette. We drive towards the stadium. We get to 7-Eleven. He gets into the parking lot. He's like, want some breakfast? I'm like, no, I'm good. He goes into the 7-Eleven, comes out with 2 cans of Red Bull and 2 Snickers bars. He cracks open the Red Bull. We're driving to the stadium. We get there, and they're like, do you have a parking pass? Charles looks at me. He's like, you have a parking pass? I'm like, no. We talk our way in. Charles puts out the cigarette. We're walking into the stadium, lights a second cigarette on the way into the stadium. And with his bag, his 7-Eleven bag that is 1 less Red Bull, he walks into Mosaic Stadium with 1 Red Bull, 2 Snickers bars, another cigarette, and that was the last game Charles ever played for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I'll forever have that as the imprint of my Labor Day memory.
That's hilarious. I wouldn't believe any other story.
Any other story, yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, he came out of the hotel, he slept all night and had a nice eggs and bacon. No, never that.
No.
Like cigarettes and Red
Snickers,
Bull.
yeah. And in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he's a beast, man. I don't know what he was made out of, but he was superhuman because he treated his body terribly, but went out and every Sunday caused havoc against whoever he played against.
All right. I'm glad I asked, Arash. I knew which button to push there. So thanks for your time, my man. Keep in touch.
All right, fellas.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.